if I am correct, around October of 2018 was the time frame during which Justice Brett Kavanaugh was in his confirmation proceeding. Now, I was on the streets at this time, and for a substantial amount of time prior to the confirmation hearing, I was being used for other people's legal efforts. I would be on the street by myself and just start monologuing or start talking to myself, as it would appear. But really, it was not to myself. I understood that where I was usually had a great deal of sonic equipment and recording equipment around, if not other kinds of surveillance. I knew this, but I also knew that something was going on transactionally that was attempting to use me or my identity. So I would speak out loud. I would speak out loud, and part of that was about making sure that I acknowledged it and also provided a challenge to those who already knew what was going on, but just refused to do anything to give me a means by which to safely address these matters. Somebody recorded all of it. Somebody heard it. Somebody wanted to do something with it, except acknowledge what it actually was. And many, many people let that happen. There were tons, many, many transactions on a very high level, and I was able to track them to actual events that had been happening at the time I was monologuing. It wasn't a performance. This is my life. I identify it and call it money laundering because ultimately it is a part of somebody's economic paradigm. And they expect to be financially advantaged, and they expect to also be able to accrue the kind of human and political capital that is used to justify whatever other kinds of activities they engage or whatever kinds of social or political benefits they are able to avail themselves of. And there appears to be substantial networks of people that support this and support the expropriation of other people for redistribution to and through others that will not acknowledge that that's how they get their information. That's how they get their currency. That's how they get the financing, including the information transactional processes that go into supporting them in a variety of activities. See, having resonance with somebody who might be a colleague, who might be in your network so that you can share information and make sure that you perform optimally in your job is one thing. But to take somebody and intentionally dispossess her after you've spent substantial amount of time lying to her about what you've been doing, and then expecting that you're going to be able to run processes through her so that you can get her to work subroutines, and then you get to selectively decide which ones you like and want to claim for yourself, is unconstitutional. I contend it's slavery. When you deny me the capacity to be able to hold myself accountable through ordinary political process, but also to be able to provide for my well-being through exercise of my constitutional rights, including the right I have to have my personal intellectual property acknowledged as mine so that it can be evaluated and it can be engaged in a economic activity, including a political economy, so that I can participate and others can be availed of the advantages, while constantly subjecting me to fulfillment of other people's service requirements as if I'm their asset for use at their disposal, is slavery. There's no justification for it. This isn't even a situation of illegal debt bondage. We're not even talking about pauperdom because I didn't pay a debt. That's not even what this is. It's more nefarious. And there's no shame in telling the truth. This isn't going to be something that people can be extorted into covering up. Are we supposed to be embarrassed that you've been lying this whole time in order to try to manufacture the social conditions to keep large swaths of people in slavery? Are we supposed to be embarrassed that you created a complete kangaroo court system and completely disabused legislative process for years to try to compel certain people into being sexual slaves at the behest of other people that are using our servitude to cover up for not only public corruption, but organized criminal activity at the highest level, I'm not ashamed and I'm not embarrassed, and nobody should be. It is completely unacceptable that somebody thinks their concept of pleasure has to do with subjecting other peoples to physical torture and to acts of humiliation while they rob them and try to claim credit for their activities and contributions as if it were their own. This would be different if both my mother and my grandfather in just the last 3 years weren't murdered so that somebody else, a number of somebody else's, could claim their estates because I was illegally dispossessed of my inheritance from those estates by virtue of fraud and corruption that has been going on for at least the last 25 years. Actively going on connected to acts of defamation against me and an intentional misrepresentation of me through engagement in deceitfully engaged contracts around specific kinds of financial relationships that turned out after 25 years to have been absolutely 100% fraudulent at the onset. And in that 25 years has been persistent pressure to try to get me to just accept, okay, fine, I'll do it. I know it's illegal, and I know it was fraudulent, and I know it wasn't correct, and I know it was unacceptable, and it was unconstitutional, but it's the only way I'm going to be able to survive. Well, I survived. And it was all unconstitutional, and it was all unacceptable. Slavery is illegal. It is against the 13th Amendment. The United States should never have done it. And they certainly shouldn't have given credit to anybody who did do it. Just because you hold on long enough to get the law changed and think that you're going to give some kickbacks to some people after you have something special that's just been recapitulated through the economic system doesn't mean you get to spend the next, 150, 160 years trying to tell other people, well, that's the way it is. That's the system. If you want to join, you have to conform. And at a certain level, you're above the law. At a certain level, the law is for other people. You represent how they're supposed to assimilate to another person's interpretation of their lives. That's how alienated it is. That's how alienated people claiming to be representatives of the people are. And the evidence of that is that no lawyer wanted to be my lawyer, and yet no lawyer will acknowledge that I have any legitimacy in court with them. No judge wanted to engage a good faith effort in taking a case connected to what occurred concerning me or the people with whom I was involved. No judge would let me in their court. The question becomes, are any of them actually qualified to represent anybody else? Or is this their trial? I contend that's exactly what it is. This is their trial. This is their trial. The question is, who's the jury? Who do they consider to be their peers? They didn't consider me to be a peer. And the truth is, at the end of the day, I don't consider them to be a peer either. If you were my peer, if you were my colleague, and somebody murdered you, even if I disagreed with you, and even if I agreed with them, they had no right to murder you and get away with it.